You know, our brains are literally wired for connection. It's just a core part of being human. But what happens when that wiring gets frayed or snaps completely? That's what we're diving into today. The deep, biological reasons we need each other and what happens when something like trauma shatters those circuits. Let's get into it.
I mean, who hasn't felt lonely at some point, right? But have you ever stopped to wonder why it physically hurts? Why it's so painful? Is it just a feeling? Or is there something much, much deeper going on in our brains? Well, it turns out the answer is baked right into our biology. So, that gut punch of loneliness? It's not a sign of weakness. It's not just you being a little needy. No, some really groundbreaking research is showing that it's actually a powerful, ancient alarm signal. Your brain is basically screaming at you, telling you that a core need, one that's just as important for survival as food or water, isn't being met.
Okay, so check this out. This is what's so fascinating. The brain treats being socially isolated almost exactly the same way it treats starvation. Think about it. Loneliness is the alarm signal, kind of like hunger pangs. The goal isn't food, it's social connection. And the result? That amazing feeling of social satiety. You know, that sense of calm and safety you feel when you're with your people?
Yeah, and the scientific term for this whole process is social homeostasis, but a much easier way to think about it is like a social thermostat in your brain. When your social connection dips too low, click, the thermostat kicks on, and it cranks up that awful feeling of loneliness. That's what pushes you to go find your friends, your family. And when you do reconnect, click, the thermostat shuts off, and you're flooded with relief and reward. Pretty cool, right?
All right, so this social thermostat is a great idea, but how does it actually work? I mean, where in the brain is it and what's flipping the switch? Let's zoom in and take a look at the control center for these basic drives.
So, it turns out, the research points to a tiny region called the hypothalamus. And get this, inside it, scientists found two very specific groups of neurons. When you're alone, one group, the social need neurons, they just light up, and that's what makes you feel bad. But the moment you're back with your crew, a different set, the social satiety neurons, they fire up, and that's where the reward comes from. It's this brilliant little push-pull system.
And just to be clear, this isn't some newfangled feature of our brains. We're talking about an ancient alarm system, one that's been fine-tuned over millions of years of evolution. I mean, for our ancestors, being alone was a death sentence. It meant you were vulnerable to predators, to everything. Sticking together was survival, plain and simple. So that urgent, painful pang of loneliness, that's literally an echo of an ancient survival instinct.
So this whole system works beautifully under normal circumstances. It keeps us safe, it keeps us connected. But what happens when an experience is so extreme, so overwhelming, that it doesn't just trip the alarm, it shatters the whole circuit? That's where we're going next.
Right. This is where the story shifts, from loneliness to trauma. Because a traumatic event isn't just a bad experience, it's a fundamental assault on our sense of safety. It overloads the brain's ability to cope, to regulate itself. It's a total system failure, and it can leave behind some serious, lasting damage.
And that's what can lead to conditions like post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Now, the key thing to understand here is that this isn't about just having bad memories. For someone with PTSD, the memory isn't just recalled, it is relived, with all the same terror, the same intensity as the original event. It feels like it's happening all over again, right now, because the brain's wiring has been fundamentally, physically changed.
And now, for the very first time, scientists can actually see this. They can map exactly what that disruption looks like inside the brain. Using some really advanced imaging, they're essentially taking a picture of the brain at the exact moment a traumatic memory is triggered.
Okay, just look at this image. This is what happens when someone recalls a normal, neutral memory. See how it's relatively quiet? Now look at what happens during a traumatic memory recall. It's a lightning storm. This is not normal brain activity. All those red lines, that's hyperconnectivity. Parts of the brain are screaming at each other in a chaotic way. And the blue lines show hypoconnectivity, where critical connections have been weakened or even cut off. It's a neural storm, a system in complete chaos.
And what's so brilliant about this is that it shows us trauma isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. The image on the left, that's classic PTSD. The one on the right is a specific subtype where people experience dissociation. You know, that feeling of being disconnected from your own body or from reality. You can literally see that even though both brains are in distress, the pattern of the short circuit is different. The wiring breaks in different places. This is huge because it shows us that trauma can damage the brain in very distinct ways.
So in all of this chaos,
the research pointed to a really surprising culprit, a part of the brain called the cerebellum. Now, most of us, when we think of the cerebellum, we think of it coordinating movement, like walking a straight line or catching a ball. But it turns out it's also our brain's master prediction machine. When it's working properly, it's constantly helping us predict what's going to happen next, which makes us feel safe. But in trauma, that predictive power just breaks. The brain loses its ability to predict safety, so it stays locked in the state of constant high alert.
This diagram here basically gives us a blueprint of that traumatic short circuit. It's a map showing how different parts of the brain are talking to each other, or, more importantly, failing to talk to each other when that memory gets triggered. So let's just walk through what's really happening here.
Okay, so first, your basic low-level survival circuits just go into overdrive. We're talking intense fight, flight, or freeze. At the same time, the connections to the more advanced parts of your brain, the parts that handle logic and context, get super weak. And that's the real problem. It blocks the brain from getting the memo that the danger is over. And the result? The person is neurologically trapped in that past moment.
Yeah, the researchers put it perfectly. The brain basically starts prioritizing raw survival above all else. Those ancient, instinctual parts of the brain just take the wheel, and they shout down the more rational, logical parts. It's like the fire alarm is screaming so loudly that you can't hear someone telling you the fire's already out.
Now, I know, seeing the brain's wiring in such a state of chaos, it can feel a little hopeless. But here's the thing. Understanding exactly how a circuit is broken is always the first and most important step towards figuring out how to fix it.
So let's just tie this all together for a second. We are biologically hardwired to need social connection to feel safe. It's a survival circuit. And trauma, well, trauma is like an earthquake, powerful enough to shatter the very foundation of that circuit, leaving a person feeling profoundly unsafe and disconnected.
And this is why this new research is just so incredibly hopeful, because by mapping these broken circuits, scientists aren't just fumbling in the dark treating symptoms anymore. They're creating a detailed, precise roadmap for brand new therapies. We're talking about things like targeted brain stimulation, or therapies designed to specifically get the cerebellum and the hypothalamus talking to each other correctly again. It's all about helping the brain heal and literally rewire itself.
So, this all leaves us with a really powerful and honestly an optimistic question for the future of mental health. We're moving from a world of mystery to a world of maps. And if we can actually map a broken circuit, well, doesn't that mean we can learn how to rebuild it?